So, I'm a marketing and insights research professional, and part of my job is to help my clients understand what consumers want and need from service providers and product companies. I personally love doing what I do because I'm a curious person who likes to learn new things. And you know what? I'm lucky to serve clients who are also really interested in hearing what people have to say. And if you happen to be one of those clients, by the way, I appreciate you. But I've run across many marketers who are a little less interested in understanding what consumers really want and need, and who are instead invested in their own ideas. And they'd rather spend their time trying to find validation for their concepts than to start with a consumer first approach and understanding if these concepts are necessary in the first place. I don't fault them for this. It's pretty natural to think that when you come up with an idea that really engages you, it'll engage other people as well. And there usually is a group of people somewhere who are enough like you that they'll be similarly engaged by it. The problem is that this group of people has to be large enough to support the business of creating and selling a product or service. And if you create something without first assessing whether that market can support your efforts, you run the risk of failure. So let me offer an example. I'm a vegetarian, and I absolutely love to check out vegetarian and vegan restaurants because they offer lots of choices for me, and I don't have to worry about the ingredients in my food because they're all plant-based. So let's say, hypothetically, I decided to start a 24-hour vegetarian diner here in a trendy college campus district in University City in St. Louis, offering plant-based foods with both vegetarian and vegan options. Now, anyone can eat at this restaurant and find something that they'll like, and we're going to have some pancakes and home fries that are so good, even the meat eaters who tag along with our customers are going to rave about them. We've even gone to the trouble to get our kosher certification for our restaurant to appeal to the Jewish population nearby. You won't find bacon or sausage on the menu unless they're plant-based faux meats. And even though we serve eggs and provide animal products like butter and honey as condiments, we cook most of our food using vegan ingredients to ensure that we offer our vegan customers plenty of worry-free choices as well. So, on the surface, this might sound like a pretty well thought out concept. We got a lot of food, we've got crossover appeal to multiple groups of people, and we have a business model that ought to be able to make some money because who doesn't love eating breakfast food in a diner at any time of day? But here is the problem with this scenario. Nowhere in my thinking am I taking the time to actually gauge consumer wants and needs. I'm just making assumptions based on my own knowledge. Who says vegetarians and vegans want a diner where we sling hash instead of serving healthier food? Who says people who aren't seeking plant-based food are interested in a breakfast place where they can't get any bacon? And why am I presuming that the local Jewish population needs a kosher restaurant nearby? And is this the sort of food they'd want to eat anyhow? And why have I settled on a 24-hour service model, which means huge labor costs, when maybe I should just focus on breakfast hours instead so I can hire just a single shift? The fact that I haven't taken the time to assess the viability of any of these ideas means that I need to at least be open to the possibility that if I put this idea in front of consumers, they're going to tell me my concept needs some fine-tuning at the very least. I may find that there is a want and even a need for this concept, but I need to change the details to make it marketable. I may also find that this idea is doomed for failure unless I can find that sustainable target market that will keep me in business because the wants and needs are so small. After all, only 6% of US adults consume a primarily plant-based diet and less than half of them are vegan. So how can I really assess consumer wants and needs? And why is it to my advantage as a marketer to do so? Well, I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. When we talk about consumer needs assessment in marketing, there are a few frameworks that you tend to see pretty commonly in textbooks. One of those is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was proposed by psychologist Abraham Maslow in the 1943 paper, A Theory of Human Motivation, in the journal Psychological Review. This hierarchy is so well established that I don't feel a lot of need to explain it. But as a quick refresher, the hierarchy is represented in the form of a pyramid, and there are 5 levels. At the bottom, there are the lower needs, physiological and safety. These are basically the needs that relate to our biological processes and essential survival in society. Above those are the three higher needs, each of which needs to be satisfied before moving on to the next. These include love and belonging, which is about relationship to others and community, then esteem, which is about confidence, achievement, and respect, and finally, self-actualization, which is where a person is most free to focus on bigger social topics like morality, creativity, problem solving, and research. Maslow also added a sixth level that rarely gets discussed called meta-motivation, which is sort of like what we today call a growth mindset. I actually object to Maslow's hierarchy of needs being included in so many marketing textbooks as a fundamental idea because it's not actually based on any evidence, and it arose from Maslow's ethnographic research with the Siksika Nation, also known as the Blackfoot people in Canada. The hierarchy of needs is not cross-cultural, and the key drivers of human behavior aren't consistent. For example, someone who grew up in a poverty mindset is more likely to prioritize physiological needs even at a higher level, while those who grew up in a prosperous mindset are more likely to prioritize self-actualized needs, even if they're struggling with more basic ones. The age, cultural context, and type of community in which a person lives can also have a huge shaping influence on their needs. This is why it's important for us to be skeptical, even if a textbook tells us something is an accepted fact. Another common set of needs are often presented in a 2x2 grid that showcase two dimensions: the source of the need and the kind of benefit that the needs deliver. The source can either be biogenic, or something we're born with, or psychogenic, which is something that's acquired over time. Some consumer behavior literature suggests that biogenic needs are our primary needs, similar to those lower levels of Maslow's pyramid, while psychogenic needs are more aspirational, like the higher levels. But again, this is not universal and really speaks about consumers more in a sociological, quantitative manner than a psychological, qualitative one. We plot these against the kind of benefit, which can either be utilitarian or hedonic. Utilitarian needs are, of course, the needs that speak to the functional usefulness of a product or service. Hedonistic are more about pleasure, fun, entertainment, fantasy, or emotion. A simple comparison would be coffee. A simple cup of coffee fills the utilitarian need of providing a warm caffeinated beverage, but a Starbucks cup of coffee fills a hedonistic need for a specific experience, thus allowing Starbucks to charge more for the coffee in question. The problem with this 2x2 is that it's very reductive because it suggests that consumer needs only really fit in 4 quadrants, and it erases context. In a more stressful situation like a depression or wartime, goods that fill basic needs ordinarily might be both utilitarian and hedonic, fulfilling both psychogenic and biogenic needs. And there are also prosperous conditions when consumers reject utilitarian goods like tap water, even for biogenic purposes. So, this breakdown is very academic sounding, but not very practical. And quite honestly, I rarely see marketers actually use it in practice, even though it's taught in marketing curriculums. One more common definition of needs seen in marketing textbooks tends to place them alongside wants and demands. I personally think this approach is the most useful and probably the closest to actual practice, so let's dig into it. My source for this discussion, by the way, is A Framework for Marketing Management, 6th edition, which is a readable, streamlined paperback version of Philip Kotler and Kevin Keller's 15th edition of their marketing management textbook. It's definitely worth your time and trouble if you need to update your marketing knowledge. In this textbook, needs are defined using 5 categories. There's stated needs, which can be articulated in a very simple I want statement. There are real needs, which cut to the chase of what a consumer actually wants, like a lower price tag or a particular color or same-day delivery. Unstated needs, which often reflect aspects like customer service or a nice experience. Delight needs, which reflect the above and beyond qualities a product or service can provide. And secret needs, which are often self-reflective, like the consumer wanting the salesperson to think that they're a good customer or that they ask smart questions. But you see, this already sounds a lot more realistic, doesn't it? And we can further take these 5 categories of needs and factor in a sense of importance or urgency to them to define them as wants or demands. So, for example, let's say I want to buy a Big Mac at McDonald's. And my need for quick in and out service might become a demand if I'm really hungry or if I'm on a limited time lunch break and I can't be bothered to sit in line for 15 minutes. And my desire for a Big Mac might also be better classified as a want if McDonald's is offering its famous Monopoly promotion and the Big Mac box is one of the ways in which you get pieces for the game. Understanding the right balance of needs, wants, or demands can help a marketer create an idea known as a value proposition. And this can be distilled into a really powerful statement about what a product or service offering delivers to address those wants and needs. One example is DuckDuckGo's value proposition, a search engine that doesn't track you. This sounds counterintuitive at first because tracking online users is how search engines can deliver a more targeted experience. But there are online search users out there who don't like being tracked and who want a search engine to do one thing, which is enable them to search the internet. So this value proposition speaks to that desire. Another is Canva's value proposition, design anything. Canva is a user-friendly web-based tool for creating high-quality printable artwork, and you can either work from templates or put your own design together quickly and easily for all sorts of different two-dimensional images or video clips. The idea of being able to overcome the learning curve of more sophisticated software, but to have a few limitations is powerful for a person who has a low level of skill or training in graphic design, but creative ideas and a willingness to adapt designs that work. Shopify has a value proposition that anyone, anywhere can start a business. And this makes sense because their business is built around providing small businesses with e-commerce tools. So we can see the value of understanding needs, wants, and demands, but how do you uncover them? You'll probably think I'm going to say, you do consumer research, and you know what? You're right. But how you do that research is really important because, and I cannot say this strongly enough, consumers don't know what they want until they want it. That means that consumers are really good at articulating pain points and unmet needs, but if you show them something they don't yet want or see a need for, they're going to respond the way we often do when we're confronted with something that doesn't meet a need in our lives, by offering some opinions about its superficial elements, or they're going to try to figure out who it's for, but they're going to avoid being too committal in their reactions beyond maybe expressing how much they like or dislike the idea. So what good consumer research tends to do is focus on uncovering pain points, unmet needs, and emotional triggers. This often involves a lot of qualitative research before you ever get to any quantitative insights, but it can also involve data mining behavioral data or looking more deeply into segments within large quantitative data sets to tease out different segments. When you do that extra work, you can uncover amazing insights that change the way you think about the needs you're fulfilling. So for example, there was a study many years ago that uncovered what is now known as the IKEA effect. It found that when consumers participate in building furniture, they purchase from a store, they tend to have a higher emotional attachment to it than if they purchase it completely assembled. Their voluntary participation in furniture assembly leads them to feel a stronger sense of self in the good that they've purchased, and that unleashes a hidden emotion that almost no one would ever consider expressing when they're buying furniture at IKEA, but which goes a long way towards explaining the popularity of the brand. And IKEA has tapped that emotion in many ways by encouraging their customers to not just build their own furniture, but consider being part of a lifestyle that involves designing their dwelling spaces with IKEA products. And one of the higher level philosophies that focuses on this sort of connection is the jobs to be done, or JTBD framework, which we've discussed in a previous episode. It suggests that consumer needs are often not about fulfilling desires so much as fulfilling roles in the consumer's life. And if you're approaching that level of thinking about a consumer's wants and needs, congratulations. You've reached a level of marketing mastery that few services and products do, but you're also going to need to continue to do lots and lots of consumer research because the job a product fulfills today might be different tomorrow as consumer wants and needs change. Well, I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time. So our plug this month is for animal welfare and rescue. And I'm not going to mention any one particular organization as a place that I want you to designate your attention because there are so many that are in need. And whether you have a local animal shelter or humane society or a place that's doing trap and release or anything along those lines, there's always a need to donate to help support the care and rehabilitation of animals in your area. One group that I do like to donate to is Stray Rescue of St. Louis. They are very well regarded in terms of their reputation. They have a 90% score on Charity Navigator, and they do a great job of getting to know the animals within, especially the urban areas that have been abused or neglected or just set loose, have gotten loose from careless owners or things like that. And they help these animals to begin to trust humans again and to find forever homes. And I respect and admire their mission so much. But there are many other animal groups out there as well that are looking after and caring for animals that have been discarded. Now, I want to say I'm an animal lover, and there are many cats and dogs and other adoptable pets out there that people get with great intentions. You know, when they're puppies or kittens, they're cute, right? They're fun to have, but they can't care for them properly. And instead of trying to find a good forever home for these pets, they'll go out and they'll drop them off in the woods, or they'll just kind of let them go loose in their neighborhood or things like that. And this almost always is one of the worst things you can do for these animals, because they wind up coming back to where humans are living because they're dependent on humans for food. They get in fights with other pets. They get in fights with wildlife. They get hit by cars. A lot of bad things can happen. And the people that are out there watching for these animals, caring for them, having compassion for them, are people that I respect and admire like you wouldn't believe. So again, I want you to take some time, research your local animal welfare organizations in your area, and be sure to give, because especially during the summer, these animals are threatened like you wouldn't believe by the heat and by just all the additional activity that's going on. And so anything you can do to help will make sure that these animals get another chance at a great life.